Hey there, welcome back. Every week, I speak to Aussies who tell me they want to use their super to buy property. And every week, I see the same confusion from myths about what you can and can't buy to little known rules that ATO enforces that could make or break your strategy. So today, I'm cutting through the noise and demystifying SMSF property investing. By the end of this video, you'll know the truth about what's allowed, what's not, and how to avoid the traps that catch most investors off guard. And stick around, because later in this video, I'll share one rule hardly anyone talks about. It's caught investors out before, forcing them to unwind entire deals, knowing just this one detail could literally save you from a six-figure mistake. All right, let's start by setting the stage. Self-managed super funds, or SMSFs, have exploded over the last decade as more Australians take control over their retirement wealth. One of the biggest attractions, buying property inside your super. On the surface, it sounds brilliant. Pool your super with your partner, set up an SMSF, buy an investment property, and let rental income and tax benefits fuel your retirement wealth. But here's the problem. SMSF property investing is shrouded in myths, half-truths, and complex rules. You break the rules, you pay the heavy penalties. Miss the key opportunities, you leave money on the table. So in this session, I want to cover a few things, okay? I want to cover the most common myths about SMSF and property, the actual rules you must play by, examples of where investors get caught out, and little known opportunities inside SMSF property strategies most people never hear about. Let's start with the myths. Okay, myth one. This is one I hear constantly. I'll just buy a nice beach house in my SMSF and use it as a holiday spot. Wrong. ATO rules are crystal clear. SMSF investments must satisfy the sole purpose test, meaning they exist only to provide retirement benefits to members. That means no living in the property yourself, no renting it to your kids, no using it as your personal weekender. It has to be an arm's length investment, strictly commercial terms, no personal benefit. So here's an example. John tried to buy a townhouse in his SMSF and rent it out to his daughter at market rent. That sounds pretty fair, right? No, that's actually a breach of SMSF rules. He had to unwind the lease and the ATO applied penalties. So myth number one, busted. You can't live in it. You can't holiday in it. You can't make it personal. Myth number two, you don't need much super to get started. Wrong again. Many people think you can set up an SMSF with $50,000 and start buying. Here's the reality. Most experts suggest you need at least $200,000, $250,000 to $300,000 combined in super for it to be worthwhile. And if you're looking at property, even more. Why? Because property is lumpy. You can't diversify properly in SMSF with tiny balances. And the setup costs, accounting, audit, and legal fees, they eat into returns at smaller balances. So if you're sitting there with a $60,000 in super and you're ready to buy a $700,000 property, I want you to think again. Unless you pool with your partner to roll over multiple accounts, it's just not practical. Myth number three, you can borrow easily in an SMSF. Now, this one is half true and it catches a lot of people off guard. Yes, you can borrow in an SMSF using what's called a limited recourse borrowing arrangement, or LRBA. But not every bank likes them. In fact, many big lenders pulled out of the SMSF loans altogether. Those who actually remain, they often require bigger deposits and higher interest rates than standard home loans. So here's an example. A couple with $250,000 in super wanted to buy a $600,000 investment property through an SMSF. With an LRBA, the bank required a 30% deposit plus cash buffers for costs. When all the dust settled, their real borrowing capacity was close to $400,000, not $600,000. So yes, borrowing is allowed, but it is tougher, stricter, and needs careful planning. Myth number four, SMSF property is always tax effective. Now, this one's actually the most dangerous. Yes, SMSFs enjoy concessional tax rates, generally 15% on income, and in retirement phase, often 0%. That's incredible, right? But property inside an SMSF is not automatically the golden goose. If the property is heavily negatively geared, remember, in SMSF, the tax offsets aren't as powerful because contribution caps limit how much you can pour in. Compare that to owning outside of super, where personal tax brackets might make negative gearing far more potent. So it depends. Sometimes SMSF is the best vehicle, sometimes it isn't. The blanket assumption that SMSF property is always tax smart is flat out wrong, and a common trap here: renovation rules. Here's one of those little known rules I teased earlier. If you've heard investors buying old properties, renovating and flipping it for a profit, but inside of an SMSF, be very careful. Under an SMSF borrowing arrangement, you usually cannot make significant improvements that fundamentally change the nature of the asset. Paint, carpet, minor repairs, they're completely fine. But knocking down a house and rebuilding, that's not allowed if there is a loan involved. That could trigger a breach, forcing the fund to sell or even unwind the deal itself. This one catches so many investors out because they assume that they can use SMSF equity like normal property. You can't. So if you had plans to buy a renovator inside an SMSF and turn it into a cash cow, I want you to think again. The rule shuts that down. So here's another little known rule: Business Real Property Exemption. Now let's talk about one of the most underappreciated rules for SMSF investors who run businesses. While you can't live in a residential SMSF property, there is an exemption for business real property. That means if you run a business, your SMSF can own property your business operates from and lease it back to you at market rent within the rules. So let's take, for an example, a family operated medical practice. Instead of paying rent to a landlord, they have their SMSF buy their building. The practice pays rent directly to their super fund. Over time, that rent builds their retirement wealth instead of someone else's. This is one of the smartest but least used SMSF strategies for small business owners. Now, let's not sugarcoat this. SMSF is a highly regulated space. Breaches can attract massive penalties, and if the ATO finds you've improperly used SMSF assets, you are personally liable. The fund can be made non-compliant, and you could lose nearly half the super balance in penalties and taxes. This is why SMSF is not a DIY hobby. You need auditors, you need accountants, you need strategies in place. Do it right, and it's one of the most powerful property vehicles in Australia. Do it wrong, and it is a financial pain. So I want to tell you a little bit of a story. One couple I met had tried to buy a $700,000 regional house through the SMSF. They assumed they could renovate and flip it, but because they used a loan, rules on improvements blocked them. They had to sit on a property they didn't even want, with little growth and poor yield, inside a rigid SMSF structure. It actually cost them years of lost opportunity. This is actually what happens when you go in blind. So if this video is helping clear up the confusion on SMSF property, hit the like button so more Aussies can see this too. And if this is your first time here, make sure you do subscribe. Every week we bring you practical Aussie-focused property strategies you can actually use. Now, if you're seriously considering SMSF property, but you're confused about the rules, don't guess. One wrong move could cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars in penalties or wasted effort. That's exactly where our team can help. We review your full situation, map out whether SMSF property truly makes sense for you, and guide you with compliant, practical strategies. So book a call with us today. Link is in the description below. Let's make sure your SMSF works for you safely and profitably. Take care.